As you can probably see, I am being an extreme multitasker tonight, so you should probably be proud of me for that. Working and doing your work. Alright, how does Jane end? Jane Jane goes to Thornfield in search of Mr. Rochester to find out that Thornfield is burnt down. So then she goes and asks around, like, what happened to Thornfield, or where's Mr. Rochester at? And she finds these people that tell her that Mr. Rochester's living out in the forest with a couple of his servants that he saved from the fire, and he is now blind from the fire, and he lost a hand in the fire also. So Jane goes to the forest in search of Mr. Rochester in his house. She finds Mr. Rochester there. They then talk and go on a walk, and he asks her to marry him, and she says yes. Oh, and also Mr. Rochester's wife jumped off the roof of Thornfield when it was engulfed in flames. So now they can get married, actually. As for St. John, he's off doing his missionary in India by himself, since he couldn't get anybody to go with him. Jane and Mr. Rochester's story is sad and wonderful. It is sad because it's sad that at first they couldn't get married in the first place because Mr. Rochester has a wife at the time. So that's kind of sad. And it's also sad that because of that wife, or not because of that wife, it's also sad that his house caught on fire and he is now blind and has no hand. I guess that's pretty sad. It's wonderful because Jane and Mr. Rochester have true love. Even when Jane was tempted by St. John to marry him, she said no. And I feel like part of the reason was that she was still in love with Mr. Rochester. So that's pretty wonderful, and it's wonderful that they get to live happily ever after, get married, and then have a kid, and then he gets his sight back in one eye, so that's good. Jane is now equal to Mr. Rochester also. She's equal because her uncle that leaves her a fortune, his fortune is, so she now has money, so she doesn't need to depend on Rochester for that. So she's kind of like her own independent now, and she doesn't have to rely on Mr. Rochester. Where now, Mr. Rochester has to rely on Jane since his accident with the fire. So now they get to be equal to each other, and that's what Jane truly wanted, was to be an independent woman and not need to rely on a man to get her through life. So that's how she can now settle down and find love and get married to Mr. Rochester. This story does end happy. They get to get married and have a kid. Like I said, the ending is happy. I was not satisfied with the ending, only because the author crammed the ending into 2 chapters, and I feel like she didn't explain a lot of stuff and just kind of threw the ending together. I don't know, maybe not. But that's why I'm not satisfied. I'm just not satisfied with that at all. And I am done.